The girl ran away from the orphanage to sing in a restaurant to raise money for her grandmother's surgery, and as soon as she took the microphone in her hands— "Who is she?" Andrew Rogers shouted as soon as Lucy approached the microphone stand, but nobody heard him. The introductory chords of a famous song started playing, drowning out his shout. "Stop, everyone stop, hold the music." He jumped up, pushing the chair aside. Behind him there was the sound of clattering dishes and someone's frightened voice, but he didn't hear any of it. The man rushed towards the stage. "Andrew, you can't do this," the manager hurried towards him. "You'll scare the girl." Lucy indeed stepped back a couple of steps. Who knows what might come to the mind of this drunken guy? Andrew grabbed the hem of her concert dress. "Jane," he whispered, "but this can't be. Am I going crazy?" "Let me go," she pleaded. But the guest seemed not to hear her. He clenched the edge of her dress in his fist and tried to touch her fingers with his free hand. "Let go." She forcefully pulled the silvery fabric, but the man didn't loosen his grip. Lucy heard the ruffle tear along the seam. "Andrew, stop this madness immediately." The manager firmly grabbed him by the shoulder. "Stop it, or I'll call security." But he didn't hear. He heard nothing and saw nothing except Lucy. "Jane, where?" He mumbled something indistinctly to himself. Probably something insane because he looked crazy. Or maybe because he was standing in front of the one he had lost so miserably many years ago, but never managed to forget. Jane. His heart suddenly pounded so hard that it became difficult to breathe. He tore at his shirt collar, but his fingers got tangled around the tie and the buttons, and then suddenly everything went dark before his eyes. "He's not feeling well. Get the ambulance quickly." He heard someone's voice from afar, but it didn't matter anymore. He was sinking into the soft, enveloping darkness and didn't want to be saved. "Get the ambulance." There was swaying on the stretcher, piercing sirens, someone's hands, and anxious voices, and he kept repeating, "Jane, Jane." And it seemed to him that he was shouting, straining his throat, but the doctors heard only a quiet and unintelligible whisper. Meanwhile, in the restaurant, the manager was calming down the frightened Lucy with some tea. "Come on, drink up, sweetie. Jay, did you put sugar in the tea?" "Yeah, there's the sugar bowl," the bartender shrugged. "Take as much as you want." "Put some more then," the manager banged his palm on the counter. "Can't you see the kid got scared? And give her some cookies, candies, I don't know, whatever you have. Bring it all out. Is there tiramisu? Bring it here, everything. Lucy," he took her hand. "How are you?" "Better," the girl forced a smile. "It's okay, Mr. Grant, don't worry about me. I just wasn't prepared." "Can you ever prepare for something like that?" Jay snorted. "Here's your dessert. Eat up, and forget about it. Maybe the guy hallucinated. Maybe he was drunk or high." "Jay, disappear from here. Make a magic trick," the owner whispered. Nothing to discuss with the kid. He rubbed his forehead in frustration. How many times had he cursed himself for hearing a teenager? Well, not officially. Of course he wasn't that stupid, but still. 13-year-old girls have no place in a tavern. There are drunk men here, and women can be just as bad sometimes, if not worse. And the atmosphere isn't exactly child-friendly. Lucy performs from 9 in the evening until midnight, which is hardly suitable. All children should be reading bedtime stories at that time, not singing songs in front of a respectable audience. But Arthur couldn't bring himself to gather the courage to point the girl to the door. Every time she took the microphone and started to sing, the whole room fell silent. Jokes ceased, loud voices quieted. It seemed they even forgot to drink. Lucy had a gift, such a pure voice and such depth. He himself would drop everything just to quietly listen to one of her songs. And how could he tell such a talent, "Sorry, dear, but you're still too young"? People came here specifically to hear this little one sing. But there was another reason. The main reason, which Arthur Grant preferred not to mention out loud, because it wasn't about the attendance of their establishment or the restaurant business at all. The girl desperately needed money. He remembered how the art director rushed to him with wide eyes. "Mr. Grant, are you free?" "Ah, never mind. Even if you're busy, we're going. We've found a gem." "What gem are you talking about, sir?" "Come on, they're waiting for you." He almost dragged him into the office, still muttering, "Give her a decent salary, do you hear me? We can't afford to miss out on such a girl." "Here we go," the manager thought wearily. "We can't afford to miss the girl. He's trying to push strippers on us again." "This isn't the kind of place we are," he said aloud. "We've never had that and never will." "What are you— come in, she's waiting." Arthur entered the office first, and he froze. seeing a modestly dressed girl with neat braids and such a fresh face that it was immediately clear she couldn't be more than 13. He turned angrily to the art director. "Have you completely lost your mind? Do you realize what trouble this could bring us? How could you be so foolish?" "Quiet," the art director replied calmly and nodded to the little girl. "Lucy, sing us something else." And then Arthur realized he was in trouble. He had never heard such a magical voice in his life. While it might have been worth killing the assistant, it was too late now. He wouldn't let go of this little singing bird for anything. Well, he coughed when the girl finished her song. "How old are you, child, and what's your name?" 13, she replied, "and they call me Lucy." 13, that's a... And when I perform, she said, I can put on more makeup. Please, I really need the money. Money, he smirked. And what do you need it for? Your parents won't buy you an iPhone. She frowned. I don't have parents, neither a mum nor a dad, and I don't need an iPhone. I'm a foster child. I only have a grandmother, but she's very old. They won't give me to her because of that. And now Grandma is sick. You see, she needs surgery and it costs... Well, how much? Lucy looked around as if afraid to say the amount aloud. I see. Arthur picked up a pen from the table. Write it down. She quickly scribbled something on the paper and handed it to him. Seeing the required amount, Arthur whistled. My oh my. Now you understand, don't you? Lucy asked hopefully. He nodded. A fleeting thought crossed his mind. Shouldn't I give some money to the girl? For him, it's just 2 months' worth of salary, but she really needs it. But does she really need it? Or maybe she's lying. Perhaps scammers have come up with a new scheme and are exploiting talented children. No, he should wait. If the girl runs away after her first performance, then all these stories about a sick grandmother are nothing more than a plain artistic fabrication. Do you think I don't know what you just thought? The girl suddenly asked. Do you think I'm lying? I don't know, he admitted honestly. You don't seem like a liar. Because I'm not a liar, she said passionately. I just need the money for my grandma. Yeah, kid, tell me, do you understand what a restaurant late at night means? People here are different and they're not drinking tea. Lucy looked at him imploringly. It was impossible to resist that look. What is all this for the girl? She's still a child, and whose fault is it? If he refuses her, what will she do? Try to get money some other way, but how? There are plenty of temptations for easy money, and there are 3 times as many scoundrels who couldn't care less about anyone but themselves. And there will be those villains who will try to persuade her into something unsavory. And when she comes to her senses, it might be too late and she'll be in trouble. Will this talented little girl ruin herself? No, no. Let her sing here, and he'll make sure no one dares to hurt her. I'll give you a job, Arthur decided. You'll sing 2 evenings a week. Plus, they'll feed you dinner in the kitchen. After Jay's performance, he'll personally take you back to your orphanage. Do they know? Not yet, but I'll make arrangements, the girl promised so fervently that there was no room for doubt. She was lying. All right, it's better if you do arrange it. You'll work until autumn, save up some money. So, do we have a deal? He absent-mindedly glanced out the window. It was a frosty March outside. Lucy smiled and reached out her hand. Yes. Good, you'll go to the dressing room now. They'll find you some dress. You can't go on stage like this. He turned to the art director again, and if any bastard, I repeat, any bastard dares to offend the girl, I'll kill them to hell. Lucy smiled slightly and straightened her narrow shoulders. She had already won 1 victory. Returning to the shelter that day, she peeked into the kitchen, where Martha was bustling about as usual. Plump, of medium height, the cook was a favorite among children of all ages, from the little ones to the tall adolescents. Kind, friendly, always ready to pour some tea and treat with cookies. They came to her just to chat, and Martha never said she was too busy. No one knew her exact age. There wasn't a wrinkle on her round, rosy face, but her gaze was mature, insightful, and deep. Lucy, like everyone else, loved the cheerful cook, but besides liking her, they also shared some secrets. Martha was a go-between. She lived near Lucy's grandmother's house, and sometimes the girl asked her to check on her grandmother, see if she needed help. Lucy could only visit her grandmother once a week, and even then, the caregivers insisted that the grandmother come herself. If earlier, albeit with some effort, the grandmother managed to do so. Now she hardly ever left the house. Martha willingly fulfilled Lucy's requests, and in return, the girl helped with cleaning and washing dishes. Martha, she said, barely containing a satisfied smile, I got a job. We'll be able to afford Grandma's surgery in the fall. Can you tell her, okay? You got a job? The woman squinted skeptically. Sit down and tell me everything. You're not even 14 yet. What kind of job is this? It's a normal job, Martha. I'll be a singer. And where might this be, I wonder? Well, Martha, how about we have some tea? So, Lucy, the cook called out, don't dodge the question. Where do you plan on singing? Well, the girl grabbed a cloth and began wiping the table. It's at a restaurant, nearby, just 2 nights a week. And this manager, he's a good guy. He told everyone not to mess with me. And he'll even drive me home. A manager? But Martha, I really need you to help me. Please don't say no, okay? Martha poured tea into cups and pulled a tin of cookies from somewhere in the kitchen cupboard. Oh, Lucy, she thought. Now, whether she liked it or not, she'd have to help her. Otherwise, she might ask someone else for help, and who knows how that would end. All right, how can I help you? The woman asked, sitting down at the table. Do you want me to perform with you? Lucy laughed. Just let me out the back door 2 nights a week, Martha, okay? I can climb back in through the window. It's not too high, I've tried. Will you help, please? Don't you want to tell the caregivers? Maybe they'd let you go. Oh, but what am I saying? Exactly, the girl nodded, taking a bite of her cookie. All right, the cook sighed, but promise me something. Want me to wash the dishes after dinner? Oh, I don't need your dishes. I'm talking about something else, Lucy. Introduce me to this manager of yours, the one who's such a good person, okay? I want to have a word with him. Okay, I'll talk to him. I'll definitely pass everything on. Arthur agreed to meet right away. He even felt relieved when he realized that at least someone cared about the girl. So, Lucy wasn't alone in this world, this brave Lucy. He met Martha herself at the restaurant door and escorted her to the hall. Please sit down, he said, nodding towards a tall stool at the counter. Jay, coffee for the lady. I'd prefer tea. As you wish. My name is Arthur Grant, and you? I'm just Martha, she replied. I work in the kitchen at the orphanage as a cook. Wonderful. Lucy told me about you. Are you her grandmother's neighbor? Well, not exactly a neighbor, but I live nearby. I visit to check on her. Of course, Helen, Lucy's grandmother, doesn't know anything about it. She glanced around the hall. And better she doesn't. She'd rather die than let her granddaughter, well, come here. Trust me, Martha, Arthur said. We have a very respectable establishment here. Of course, it's not for a young girl, but in other places, believe me, no one could guarantee her safety. Here, I, personally, vouch for it. You can rest assured about Lucy. Can I? Really, can I? He smiled. This woman was like an alien to him, a creature from another world. Plump, with smoothly combed hair, tied in a knot at the nape. A pleasant face, but without a gram of makeup. Some old-fashioned dress, and that little purse she held on her lap, clearly not knowing where to hang it. Arthur was used to completely different women, with styled hair, precise figures in the trendiest clothes. They were beautiful, and as cold as precious stones. But with Martha, there was a directness, from her gaze, her voice, her intonation, that somehow warmed his heart. She seemed genuine, real, honest, everything laid bare. You can, he said confidently. And you, I suppose, are loved by children. They love me, she admitted with pride, and I love them. That's why I decided to work in the orphanage. I don't have children of my own, and now perhaps I never will. But at least I find joy in these children. I have a daughter, Arthur said, his voice suddenly trembling. She's 13, just like Lucy. 13. He looked away, and staring at him now was like peering through a keyhole. Having a daughter is happiness. The happiness, he echoed. Is she doing well in school? Martha asked, just to say something. I don't know. I haven't seen her in a long time. Her mother and I parted ways when she was barely 2 years old. They went somewhere to Europe, promised to call. You know, Lucy even... She reminds me a lot of my wife. If I weren't sure she was with our daughter in Europe, I'd think she was my daughter. Sometimes I even forget that she's not mine by blood. Martha stayed silent. What could she say? Everyone has their own bitterness. And if someone has opened the curtain of their soul to you, then they must be really struggling. Just watch and listen. Arthur looked at her again, straight in the eyes. Do you understand now why I won't let anyone hurt Lucy? Martha nodded. Yes, now I understand. And now, a few months later, Arthur sat beside the pale but bravely smiling Lucy, not knowing what to do. Let me take you home, he offered. You're scared. Where do you need to go on stage? You can rest today. No need, Mr. Grant. Thank you, but no need. She stood up and adjusted her concert dress. The ruffle at the hem had cracked, but it was hardly noticeable. "I'll sing." Meanwhile, in the hospital room, Andrew Rogers lay under the drips. Some sensor beeped quietly above his head. He didn't see it and didn't want to see it. It was probably some kind of creepy technological thing that made sure he didn't kick the bucket here. Andrew struggled to remember why he was here. They were out with friends at a restaurant. Yes, that's right. He invited everyone himself, celebrating a profitable deal. And then, suddenly, he felt unwell. But why? Everything seemed fine. And then, like a sharp, glittering needle, a memory pierced his brain. A girl, almost a girl in a long silver dress, long hair cascading over her shoulders. Jane. His Jane. But how? So many years have passed. Could she remain the same as she was in their last meeting? The sensor above his head beeped more frequently and louder. A nurse rushed into the room immediately. "Mr. Rogers, are you okay?" "No, I'm fine," he rudely replied. "I'm lying here on drips and enjoying it. Leave, will you? If you freak out, you'll feel worse. You shouldn't get nervous, dear." "I didn't ask you, and you're not dear to me." "If you keep being rude," she added calmly and adjusted the drip cord, "I'll give you a sedative. You look much nicer when you're asleep. And probably even more handsome when dead, right?" he yelled. "Get out, stop bothering me. I'll talk to the doctor about you later. I don't know who they hire around here." The girl calmly adjusted the drip wheel, straightened his blanket, and slowly left. "Damn," he muttered, not understanding whom he was angry with, himself for being rude, the nurse for not being scared of his anger. Or maybe this stupid helplessness of his, lying here, scared to move a muscle. Jane always made him feel helpless, always, but he only realized it now, and yet it used to seem the other way around. Andrew closed his eyes and, for the first time in 15 years, allowed himself to remember everything from the very beginning. It even seemed to him that the intoxicating scent of lilac was wafting in the air again, and he was 22 again. With that special magical spring outside, he spends every evening sitting on a bench by the entrance, never letting go of his guitar. He doesn't play very well, of course, but a guy with a guitar is always attractive, isn't it? Neighboring girls surround him, unaware that they don't interest him in the slightest. He has his own first love, unknown to anyone else, yet she doesn't seem to care. Jane doesn't come home before 9 in the evening. He knows she works in some nouveau riche office during the day and attends language classes with a tutor in the evenings. She wants to become a translator and someday leave this place. He doesn't want to leave, but for Jane he's willing to do anything. However, she doesn't notice him. She passes by, not even turning her head. And then he can't even breathe properly. She's so slender, with a straight posture, swift as an arrow, it seems like she could just take off. In her strict business suit, heels, with smooth hair. As he falls asleep, he plays an engaging game with himself. He imagines Jane in a sundress with her hair down. There she walks through a chamomile field, the grass softly yielding under her bare feet. Her hair smells of chamomile, glistening in the sunlight, and Jane laughs hearty and inviting, leading him along, and he follows her, forever enchanted by her laughter, and she kisses just like she laughs, hearty, invitingly. "Jane!" One day he finally dared, calling out to her. She turned her head and stopped, as if noticing him for the first time, as if he hadn't been there every evening. "Hello, do we know each other?" "We've known each other for more than one lifetime," he blurted out. It didn't matter what nonsense he was spewing now. The main thing was that she wasn't leaving. She stood there and listened to him. "In a past life, your name was Esmeralda and mine. Quasimodo. You see, you're starting to remember." She politely smiled. "And what's your name in this life?" "I am Andre." "So, Andrew." "No, Andre, it's more interesting this way." "Pleased to meet you, Andre." She stepped toward the door. She'll leave, he panicked and jumped off the bench. "Listen, Jane, would you like to climb up to the roof, have some champagne, and I'll tell you all about our past lives. There's a lot to remember." "And the champagne, of course, on my tab," she either asked or stated. "On mine," he hurriedly replied. "Everything is on me, the roof, the champagne, anything you want." Oh, what a sweet, honeyed spring romance it was. He climbed the roofs like a wild cat, searching for the best view, for her. And he spent almost half of his salary on the best champagne, also for Jane. He even composed songs all dedicated solely to her. Jane laughed and said he should have been a troubadour. And you couldn't tell at first glance that he was a serious person, a geologist. He didn't pay attention to her affectionate jokes. "Well, tell me, why do you need your foreign adventure?" This question haunted him. "We could settle down perfectly fine here. You're learning languages. You could tutor. Everyone's obsessed with French nowadays, aren't they? Well, what a bliss dealing with school children. You don't have to deal with school children necessarily. Don't adults learn languages? You're learning." Jane draped her long legs over his lap and wrinkled her cute nose. "Adults rarely learn. I'm an exception." "Well, okay," and he ran his palm along her narrow ankle to the knee and back. Her skin was so smooth, like silk. "Don't you want tutoring? There are other options." "Like what?" "Like being a translator. You get a foreign book and translate it slowly. You could even earn during maternity leave. Good money, plus my salary. We could live decently." "Don't talk to me about maternity leave." She immediately jumped up and began pacing nervously around the room. "How can you not understand? I've put so much effort and time into my future since school. I studied until I was blue in the face while everyone else was out having fun. During vacations, I crammed new topics, entered every competition and Olympiad, and clawed my way to a gold medal. And do you think getting into college was easy? I toiled away like a convict, and then had to hold my ground on this cursed prestigious faculty." "Well done," he remarked, not taking his eyes off her slender figure. "You're determined." "And my job? Do you think I enjoy it?" "Why are you working there then?" "For the prospective." Jane pronounced each syllable separately. "I'm learning languages too for the sake of a good life in the future. And you're talking nonsense about maternity leave, dairy kitchen, plus 20 kilograms of weight gain and life. What life is there? Store home playground? I'm not living for that." "Understood, don't go on." He hugged her, drawing her close, and kissed her for a long time, until Jane became tender and yielding again. Someday, he would persuade her. Someday, he would. Time ceased to exist. He lived as if in a daze, from one encounter to another, and nothing, absolutely nothing around mattered, except her voice, the scent of her hair, and her cool skin. "Do you love me? Say you love me," he insisted. But she never answered, only once, coldly, harshly. Looking him straight in the eyes, she said, "Never, no love will ruin my life." "What are you talking about?" He was bewildered. And only much later did he understand. It was a farewell. Jane loved him, surely she did, but she was preparing herself for parting because she couldn't do otherwise. She had spoken many times about how nothing was more important to her than the future she had dreamed of. She had spoken. He, the idiot, couldn't hear her, couldn't believe that she wasn't joking. Jane studied feverishly in school to become a gold medalist. She got a job with a rich fool, crammed languages in the evenings, all to fulfill her dream of living in some European country where nothing out of the ordinary ever happens, where one can live a comfortable, leisurely life and feel safe. And what could he, a young fool in love with a guitar, give her? Pregnancy, a hastily arranged marriage, and then heartburn, swelling, a figure ruined by childbirth, and sleepless nights with a crying baby. A dreary life where you have to scrimp to save every penny. A stale husband, childhood illnesses, parent-teacher meetings. She understood this and didn't want to betray her dream. "That's what she wanted to tell me then," the man thought wearily. "She wanted to say she loves me, but she won't give up her plans even for love." After that meeting, he never saw her again. Her mother just shrugged at all his desperate inquiries. She had left, she said, and didn't say where. Will she come back? Who knows? Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. She'll come back, he assured himself to keep from going crazy. She can't be without me. She'll return. I just have to wait. And so he waited, eagerly awaiting her every day. He rushed home from work, hoping that Jane would return and knock on the door of his rented apartment. Out of habit, he bought champagne. He would sit for hours by the window, not wanting to miss the moment when she would briskly tap her heels on the road leading to the entrance. This futile waiting wore him down, draining him completely. And surely, at some point, he grew too tired of waiting. It was late autumn on the last Friday of November. He returned from work and was about to settle by the window as usual, clutching a platy, but suddenly realized he didn't want to. He didn't want anything at all, just sleep. Suddenly it seemed to him that he hadn't slept for a good 100 years, maybe even more. He collapsed into bed on Friday and woke up only on Sunday morning. And that was it. He felt free and empty at the same time. As if everything had suddenly become indifferent. Jane had left and would never return. He would never see her again. So he simply had to live. Just live. In essence, it wasn't the worst idea. He just wanted to know how to make it happen. Not long ago, the world around him was filled with music, bright colors and scents, but now it suddenly dimmed, lost its color, and fell silent. Broken expectations and worn-out hope felt like a nerve being pulled from a tooth. The tooth remained, but it had lost all sensitivity. In the first few days, he lived like a programmed robot. He got up in the morning because the alarm went off, ate breakfast because his body needed sustenance, went to work because he had to, and also because work gave his ghostly half-life some semblance of meaning. And then somehow it became easier. A friend invited him on an expedition somewhere out in the boonies, searching for oil. And that was exactly what he needed. A complete change of scenery, it seemed to be called. Hard work, new challenges, and healthy exhaustion healed him. He remembered vividly how once, sitting by the campfire, he suddenly felt happy out of nowhere. It smelled of pine cones, he was full, and warmth radiated from the fire. And he knew exactly what he would do tomorrow and how important his work was to others. And in a couple of weeks, the new year would come. This happy and dreadful year would end. The hands of the clock would move forward, and a new page would be opened. It would be opened, right? Of course it would. Why wouldn't it? He never found out whether he forgot about Jane, fell out of love, or simply resigned himself to her departure and preferred not to dwell on it. What's done is done. And then there was that evening in the restaurant, and Jane untouched by time. Nonsense, it's all nonsense. But then, whom did he see there? He felt for the nurse call button. She appeared after a minute. "I'm here, Mr. Rogers. How long am I supposed to lie here? Work is waiting for me. When will I be discharged?" he rasped. The nurse didn't lose her usual composure. "It's best to discuss that with the doctor, Mr. Rogers, but I believe it will be quite soon." "All right, give me the phone. I need to know what's happening out there without me." "I'm afraid that's out of the question." "What? You're attending physician's orders," she charmingly smiled. "Reading the news, engaging in business negotiations, all of that could provoke strong emotions. It's all contraindicated for you." And she meaningfully looked at the beeping sensor above the patient's head. He really wanted to throw something at this healthcare fairy, but unfortunately, there was nothing heavy at hand. The days of August turned out to be hot, as if summer had decided to pour out all its remaining warmth. On these warm summer evenings, all the windows in the children's home were wide open, and from the street the conversations of the caregivers quietly and soothingly drifted in. "It's really good that they gave us this rest facility near the dacha, don't you agree? It's good for the kids to be in nature and for us to relax a bit. Thanks to the new mayor," one of the caregivers remarked. "Well, it's good in a way, of course, but you were there," another replied. "I was there in winter. After they gave us this gift, went with the director to see what's what. And I'll tell you, the facility was abandoned and there's so much work to be done there. But they assigned us a repair crew." "That's true, but they only fixed up the buildings, and as for the surroundings, before we could organize the kids to do some community service. But now they call it exploiting child labor." "Oh, you can't understand what's happening." Two 13-year-old girls sat in their room listening with curiosity to the conversation. Upon hearing the last phrase, they exchanged knowing glances and chuckled quietly. "This old grouch Mrs. Harris always finds fault," whispered Alice. "They gave us the dasha. Bad. They did the repairs. Bad again." Lucy glanced at the clock and pressed her finger to her lips. "Leaving already?" Alice raised her eyebrows in surprise. "It's still early." "Shit time." Lucy tiptoed to the door and peeked into the corridor. Generally, weekend evenings were quiet, especially in the summer. Now, with some of the children taken to the larger recreational facility, converted into a summer cottage for the orphanage, the building and its surroundings were quieter. Even time itself seemed to slow down. There was no frenetic pace. Instead, it was a smooth, honeyed flow. After dinner, the caregivers brought out chairs and a small tea table onto the porch and sat there, some with their phones, some with books. Those who wanted to chat took leisurely strolls along the flower beds or went to the gazebo to avoid disturbing others. It was a peaceful, relaxed time. Lucy silently slipped out the door and headed to the dining hall. Of course, no one was there anymore. Only the quiet splashing of water from the kitchen could be heard. "Martha," Lucy called out in a loud whisper. The cook turned around, her round, flushed face breaking into a smile. She quickly wiped her hands with a towel and approached Lucy. "Time for you to leave already." "Yes, Martha, have you visited Grandma yet?" The cook sighed, smoothing Lucy's tousled bangs. I did visit her. Well, what can I say? It's not good. She needs surgery." "We'll do it," Lucy said confidently. "I've saved up quite a bit, Martha. I'll work for another month and then—" "Oh, sweetheart," tears welled up in the woman's eyes. "Every time they let you go, my heart aches. What if someone hurts you? I'm so worried about you, Lucy." Martha approached the door of the back entrance and peeked outside first. "Looks like nobody's there. Go on. God bless you." Lucy darted outside and hurried to the iron fence. Crossing it with practiced ease wasn't a problem. The main thing was not to get caught, but so far, luck was on her side. Watching Lucy's back, the cook crossed herself. Autumn couldn't come soon enough. The girl would earn what she needed and forget about this restaurant. Even though Arthur turned out to be a decent man, keeping his word and caring for the little singer as if she were his own, not allowing anyone to even glance at her sideways, still, what's a child doing in a nightclub? Martha took out her phone from her pocket and quickly typed a message. "Arthur, she's on her way. Meet her." And blushing slightly from embarrassment, she added a smiley face with a heart. She hadn't told anyone yet, but after their first meeting, Arthur called again and invited Martha to dinner. Since then, they began dating, and recently, he started talking about marriage. "How could you, Arthur?" Martha asked fearfully. "I'm not your equal. I'm just a simple woman, a cook at the orphanage. And you?" "And I," he said, gently placing a finger on her lips, "want to be your husband, because you are sincere, kind, real, and it's still unknown who is unequal to whom." Martha didn't wear the ring he gave her to work, but always kept it in her purse, and whenever she had a free moment, she would take it out to stroke it. "Don't worry, Martha, Lucy is already here, love," the message chimed. "That's how it goes. Love." And who would have thought that such a refined, smart, and caring man could fall in love with such an ordinary, unremarkable woman? Martha remembered how she laughed when a gypsy predicted such a husband for her 20 years ago. "You'll meet him in a noisy place," she said. "He'll love you with all his heart. Just don't push him away. Believe in him, and everything will be fine." Back then, Martha thought it was all nonsense, but look at that, it came true. Andrew Rogers grimly looked at himself in the mirror. Oh yes, he looked great after lying in the hospital bed for a month, slimmed down, pale as paper. There were circles under his eyes so deep, you couldn't tell if it was because he couldn't sleep for a month, or if someone had given him a beating. Even his hair seemed to have thinned, and he ran his hand over his head. He should go to the barber, but he'd avoid it, of course. He chuckled, remembering how in his youth he never set foot in a barber shop. Back then, he wore his hair long, down to his shoulders, proud of it. The girls liked it and envied him, no wonder. His mane was something else, thick, wheat-colored, and his hair curled in large curls. Back then, he only saw barber scissors in nightmares, but now, once a month, like clockwork. He had his hair cut for the first time right after Jane. At New Year's, he handed his friend the clippers and curtly ordered, "Shave it all off, I'm tired of these locks." "Your heat will freeze without them," his friend laughed, but Andrew didn't back down. "Shave, I'm telling you, I'm starting a new life." His friend didn't argue, and it's strange. As his luxurious curls fell to the floor, the feeling of finally being free from the past became stronger and stronger. Maybe he should shave his head again, although maybe not. He's a respectable man now. People might not understand, but he definitely needs to visit the barber. Just not today. Today, he has other plans. He adjusted his tie, took the keys to the car, and left the house. At this hour, there was still plenty of space to park near the restaurant. Rightly so, as only those with work the next day come here at this time, meaning only dinner and a small amount of alcohol. It's only after midnight that revelers flood in and drunken revelry begins. "Hello, Andrew," nodded the manager. "Hello, Arthur, we need to talk." "I'm listening." Andrew sighed. He hadn't been open and carefree for a long time, and he was out of practice, apologizing. "I messed up last time, I'm sorry, forgive me." It's okay. So, no, listen, I don't even know what got into me. They rushed me to the hospital, and I ended up staying there for a month. They said it was a severe heart attack. And you know what? I used to love a girl once, so much so that she left me, you understand. It was so long ago, years and years. And I saw this singer of yours and couldn't believe my eyes. It's her. Who's her? Arthur asked coldly. That girl, Arthur, I nearly lost it. How can it be that she's the same and, most importantly, hasn't changed at all? Is that even possible? In short, I need to see her. I want to talk. Help me. Andrew, the manager said, you may not be aware, but our singer is still just a child. We gave her a job due to exceptional circumstances. Because of her makeup, she looks like an adult. But in reality, she's just, in short, she can't possibly be the girl you're talking about. What if she's her daughter? The man persisted, or her younger sister? We know nothing about the girl's parents, Arthur replied irritably. She lives and is raised in an orphanage. And as for the resemblance, well, stranger things have happened. Lucy reminds me of someone too. But that's no reason to think that. In short, I apologize. Wait, Arthur. Andrew caught the manager's sleeve. I understand everything, but you have to understand me too. I have to see her. I must. I'm obliged. Just to know that I haven't lost my mind. I nearly lost it in the hospital. And now, I seem to have survived, but I don't know if I should go on living as before, or if I should just go to the loony bin and surrender. Just let me talk to her, and I swear I won't lay a finger on her. Want us to talk in your presence? Arthur, please. Arthur shook his head, poor guy. He probably didn't even know what was wrong with his head anymore. I'll bring Lucy to the hall. You can talk right here, in my presence. Now, sit down. I'll bring the girl. Andrew obediently plopped down at the nearest table. When the manager entered the hall with Lucy, his heart began to beat wildly again. I might as well die here, he thought sadly. I might as well. Arthur approached and pulled out a chair for Lucy. Take a seat. Andrew just wanted to have a chat with you, and now we'll find out what exactly about. The girl sat down and looked questioningly at the stranger. There was not a hint of fear left after their first meeting. She looks so much like Jane, he thought again. It's like seeing the same face. He began, clearing his throat. First of all, I want to apologize for what happened last time. I wasn't myself then. I was sick, my heart. Forgive me. Accepted, Lucy smiled. How are you feeling now? Not bad, thank you. I wanted to ask you something. You really resemble an old acquaintance of mine, almost too much alike. So, I thought, maybe you two are, well, related. Tell me, do you know anything about your parents, your mother, your father? They divorced a long time ago, the girl shrugged. I don't remember my dad, don't even know his name. My grandma changed all my documents when they left me with her. She even gave me her surname and changed my patronymic. I see, and what about your mother? Do you remember her? My mom, Grandma said she left me with her. I don't know where she is, but Grandma said she's in France, I think. But nobody knows for sure. The men both looked at Lucy suddenly. What's her name? Andrew clarified. Your mum. Jane Murray for send you. Arthur, what's wrong with you? Arthur buried his face in his hands. Is your grandma's name Helen? He asked hoarsely. Yes, Helen Taylor. That's my grandma. Why? What's going on, Mr. Grant? He withdrew his hands from his face. His eyes were red and inflamed. Nothing, he said. It's just that you're my daughter. Maybe your grandma didn't tell you, but she changed your name too. I named you Laura. He fell silent for a long time. Jane and I split up 15 years ago, Andrew said. And how old are you? 13. You're not to blame for any of this, Arthur said wearily. Jane, my wife, told me she just ended a passionate affair. She even rented an apartment in another part of the city so we wouldn't accidentally meet. Apparently, she saw more potential in me. By then, I was already involved in the restaurant business, and she kept urging me to go to Europe to open a restaurant there. Yeah, she was obsessed with Europe the whole way, Andrew grumbled in agreement. It's like she watched too many movies. What nonsense, as if people don't live here. Yeah, it's all true. She kept urging me and I kept refusing, but she insisted, and in the end, we decided to go to France, just for a vacation, to look around. I hoped Jane would realize that things aren't as simple there either. And we returned from that trip as a trio. When we found out about the pregnancy, Jane seemed so happy. It wasn't until later that I realized she was just hoping the child would give her more leverage over me. And then Laura was born. My wife started telling me every day, that our daughter would have to grow up in unpredictability, that nothing could be planned here, not even for a year ahead, and that if I were a responsible person, I would have moved the family to Europe long ago, where you can live and raise children peacefully. Haha, such familiar speeches, chuckled Andrew. Calmness, prosperity, stability, foresight. We've been constantly arguing, nodded Arthur. I'm so tired of it. I would have divorced myself if it weren't for my daughter, and one day I came back from work and found no one. Neither my wife, nor Laura, nor their belongings, just a note on the table saying they're leaving forever. I rushed to call my mother-in-law, but she repeated the same to me. That Jane and Laura left so I wouldn't ever call her again. I don't know what my wife told her about me, but obviously nothing good. Grandma said that Mum came to her and said she needed to leave for some business, and she never came back. Grandma even went to the police. They checked everywhere and found out that Mum had documents ready for leaving for a long time, but only for her, not for me, Lucy said sadly. She didn't want to take me with her, so Grandma probably decided that nobody needs me, and that's why she changed the documents. She wanted to get guardianship, but they didn't allow her. They said she's already too old to raise a child alone, and now I'm saving up for surgery. You're not saving anymore, kiddo, Arthur said firmly. Today we're going to Grandma's and telling her to prepare for the surgery. I'll cover all the expenses. And I, Andrew said thoughtfully, I guess I'll look for a good surgeon. It's a pity for Grandma. Even though she raised such a daughter herself, it's still a pity. She probably wanted things to turn out better. The pain and confusion that had tormented him dissolved. There were no more mysteries, no more unanswered questions, and the image of Jane, so bright just recently, suddenly dimmed and began to blur. Well then, he said, standing up, I'm glad everything worked out. Once again, please accept my apologies. And about the doctors, I'll get in touch with you in a few days, Arthur. And now it's time for me to go. I think you have plenty to talk about without me. He stepped out onto the street, feeling healthier and stronger than ever. Funny how it all turned out. He thought he'd lost his mind, had a tantrum in a decent place, scared the girl, and almost died himself. But in the end, it turned out that thanks to him, father and daughter found each other, and Helen will live, God willing, the old bag. He didn't love her. He thought she deliberately hid Jane from him, and Jane always made her own decisions. So she got what she deserved, abandoning the closest people. Oh, Jane, Jane, are you happy now? Made it to your beloved Europe, huh? Well, now sit there. 2 months later, Arthur, Martha, and Lucy were waiting for their grandmother, Helen, to be discharged from the hospital. Martha held a large bouquet of flowers, while Arthur conversed with the doctor. The girl stood nearby, holding her father's hand. Everything went well, the doctor informed them. Considering her age, Helen's body is remarkably strong, so there's every reason to believe that her recovery will be smooth sailing. Of course, she'll need attentive care initially, but don't let her be idle. Moderate activity is essential, and don't allow her to pity herself. People of Helen's age often fear to make any movement after surgery. Arthur nodded and turned to his daughter and fiancé. I think it's best if Grandma stays with us for now. We'll set up a room for her, cater to her needs. No, Dad, Lucy shook her head. Grandma will be better off at home. She's more accustomed there. I'll stay with her for now and help out. No, Lucy, her father countered. We'll hire a good caregiver for Grandma, and we'll come to visit her every day. You need to focus on your studies, your vocal lessons. And besides, he hugged his daughter tightly, I've lived too long without you. I don't want to part ways again. Yes, sweetheart, Daddy's right, Martha said. Grandma needs specialized help, someone with medical training. But we can always visit her, and besides, she grinned mischievously, soon I'll need your help. When the baby arrives. The girl gasped excitedly. A baby, and you kept quiet. We weren't sure ourselves until this morning, Arthur explained. But now you know. You'll soon have a little brother or sister, and we can't manage without your help. And when Grandma recovers, if she wants, she can move in with us. 10 years later, Lucy won the international singing competition. Grandma, Dad, and Martha with their twins sat in the front row, holding flowers, quietly melting with pride, listening to the admiring whispers in the hall. Meanwhile, in a quiet village cafe somewhere in France, sat a very thin, disheveled woman with straw-like hair. The regulars knew Jeanne couldn't be more than 45 or 46, yet she looked like an old woman. Wrinkles prematurely creased her once beautiful face. her gaze heavy with the disappointment of someone disillusioned. Jean lived in seclusion on the rural outskirts, having no friendships. She only spoke to people when necessary. Rumor had it she had moved to France from another country. She had wanted to settle in Paris, but there were difficulties either with work or documents. For several years she scraped by with odd jobs, then realized Paris wasn't for her. Living here, in a quiet village, was simpler, and the cost of living was not as biting. What sustained this lonely, gloomy woman? Whom had she left behind in her homeland? Why did she decide to move in the first place? No one knew, and no one cared to find out. The television on the wall murmured quietly, not attracting much attention. Well, almost not anyone's. Jeanne, without looking away, was fixedly staring at the screen. "What show is this?" she suddenly asked loudly. "It's a talent competition," someone lazily replied to her. The woman turned back to the screen and froze, watching the young singer with a familiar accent. "Laura," the commentator rattled off, "a girl with an extraordinary destiny. She grew up in an orphanage, and only thanks to a fortunate turn of events, managed to find her father, reuniting the family. This girl's extraordinary talents, combined with her fantastic luck, helped her win the toughest competition, and now a brilliant future awaits her." A radiant face of Laura appeared on the screen. Jeanne straightened up and clenched her teeth tightly. Watching this girl, seeing herself in her youth, was unbearable. An unwanted child, whom she had so eagerly disposed of, throwing her away like trash. And look at her now, she has everything. A loving family. She even managed to find her daddy somehow. And of course, Grandma. She has fame and a brilliant future ahead. Jean stood up and quickly left the pub, for some reason trying to keep her posture upright. It felt like everyone there was looking at her, the mother who abandoned her child, judging and despising her. "This shouldn't be happening," she repeated to herself over and over. "This is me. I worked so hard. I schemed so much to achieve my goal. And instead, I'm sitting in the backwoods among some idiot farmers. I should be living in Paris and shining, yes, shining, surrounded by luxury and the most magnificent men. I should have a brilliant future, not her. Life just cheated me." She shoved her hands deeper into her coat pockets and quickened her pace.